husband, baby.
She knew who she married, right? She wasn't marrying a saint.
Now you see her, now you don't.
They're never in the same place.
The mystery of the vanishing First Lady.
There are some reports that they have virtually separated.
It's a marriage that works for them.
Where has Melania gone?
She's not afraid to have a difference of opinion.
And what does her absence mean for the most powerful man in the world?
Does she love him, do you think?
She hates his fucking guts.
Hello again and welcome to our 60 Minutes podcast, Extra Minutes. My name is Dimity Clancey and joining me today is our producer, Anne Worthington. We're talking today about a topic that everybody seems to have such an opinion on, but I feel like nobody knows very much about. And it is the enigma that is Melania Trump.
That's right. She's certainly mysterious. And I think as a First Lady, little was known the first time round, and coming back for a second term in office alongside her husband, President Donald Trump, hopes to learn more about Melania has certainly, is what people wanted to know, how much closer they are to unravelling the mystery that is Melania.
You almost feel like this time that we're getting less of Melania. Like I feel like just, as a member of the public, that you were not seeing her at all this time.
Yeah, which is certainly been in the headlines. Where is Melania? Missing in action, a First Lady missing in action. She was dubbed a part-time First Lady the first time around. Second time around, she's, the New York Times did a piece. She's been there at that point for a few weeks in total at the White House since her husband was inaugurated in January. And that mainly comes from her decision to decide not to live full-time in the White House, but to instead spend her time at Mar-a-Lago or in New York at Trump Tower.
And she can do the role the way she wants to. I mean, let's remember that this is a job that has no job description. There's no money. There's no rule book. So really she is entitled to do whatever she likes.
Absolutely. And you speak to someone like Anita McBride, who is an expert on First Ladies, and she says this is the modern face of a First Lady doing a very traditional role in her own way and on her own terms.
How would you describe her?
Confident, self-assured, strong.
Do you think she should be spending more time in the White House?
I think the times that she is there are the times that are important. I think the one way to look at it is it can be quality over quantity.
And, any other speculation that might be around where the First Lady is, in her words, a waste of words. But her absence does seem to be a bit of a dirty secret around the White House, that there's something more to her not being beside the president's side.
And we spoke to some very interesting characters, one of them being Michael Wolff for this story. For the listeners, how would you describe Michael Wolff?
I think he's the man that the White House loves to hate. So, they will say that his claims are outrageous, that his allegations are unverified, and it's all just speculation. But then there's the other side, which is that, they're probably all reading his books secretly, secret squirrel under the desk.
What do they call him? The White House's public enemy but private friend.
Yes, yeah. So he is someone who in recent weeks has come out and said the unspeakable, which is Melania's absence is because the first couple are effectively separated. So all those eye rolls and those, awkward public moments, that everyone speculates and says, is she happy with him? How does she stay with such a divisive president? He's saying what no one else, he claims, will say, which is they're done.
Does she love him, do you think?
At one point, I asked someone who's very close to them, and I said, so what's going on? And this person looked at me like I was a real dunce, and then said, she hates his fucking guts.
I mean, they can do what they want to do, but I mean, everything they do suggests, or could be interpreted as them being separated.
Yeah, they seem to be together when they need to be, but at every other time apart. And you look at other first couples before them and, how they interacted. Well, perhaps they are, again, just doing it their way, or perhaps there is some truth to certainly what Michael Wolff believes, which is that the first couple are effectively separated, which is a first in the White House.
It's in the detail, though, isn't it? Because you can be living separately or you can be separated, which are two totally different things. I mean, who are we to judge if it works for them? Is that not okay?
Yeah. And I think, I probably land on the side of someone like Kate Bennett, the former CNN reporter who we interviewed and who had covered Melania in her first term, this is a couple that has been together for 30 years, married for 20. And I think she said,
ups and downs,
peaks and troughs. And, who are we, to judge?
The infidelities, it's a tough road, for anybody to navigate that in a marriage. What about for Melania?
I mean, two things can be true. She knew who she married, right? She wasn't marrying a saint. She knows the guy is not known for his monogamy, right? Did she think that their private marital issues would be so publicly divulged? Absolutely not. And I think that was crippling for her. And understandably. Is it to the point that she left him? No. Is it to the point that she was real angry with him? Absolutely.
And let's remember that Donald Trump always harboured political ambitions. He always talked about wanting to be president of the United States. But was it something that Melania was ever interested in, or what was her take on that?
No. I mean, I think it was certainly something that she encouraged him. She probably got sick of hearing him saying he's going to run every single time to, finally do it, but in terms of whether it was something that she aspired to as a young model, from Slovenia, I think it was, probably the furthest thing from her mind. Although she did do a modelling shoot where she actually played the First Lady, which was kind of, maybe perhaps a sign of things to come.
But then there's also the other part of it, of Donald Trump's life, the criminal record, the infidelities. Navigating that in a marriage would be hard enough, but then having to do it on the public stage of being president and first lady is a whole new level. I mean, can we blame her for not wanting to be by his side all the time?
Well, she didn't do the whole stand by your man that we have come to see previous people in the public eye, their wives do and stand by them. Again, Kate Bennett is that she applauds that. She, again, a mark of a modern woman. Why should she defend something like that? Whether it's enough to end a long relationship, again, it's something that, is something for them, really, ultimately.
The other interesting insight that Kate, I thought, gave was the fashion. I mean, I think Melania looks fabulous in her outfits. And I think her fashion sense has changed over the years. But Kate will tell you that there's no coincidence when it comes to Melania and what she wears.
Yes. So she... for a lady who says fiercely private, doesn't say too much, she began to understand the messages through what she was wearing and when. So she talks about, for example, the fuchsia pink blouse.
What's it really called, Anne?
It's called a pussy bow blouse, and it was after the Hollywood Access tapes in the lead up to the 2016 presidential campaign. And, her husband had been caught on tape saying that you can do whatever you want in his approach to women. And so then she came out wearing the pink blouse. So Kate believes that is, a sign from the First Lady. And of course she did defend him on that. She said, it was just kind of boy talk, locker room talk. So
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was the pink blouse.
The white suit. Mm-hmm. What did that tell everyone?
It was one of the first public appearances that the couple had made after the allegations around his infidelity with Stormy Daniels, who was a porn star. Again, it was, she'd been very quiet and silent. People were wondering what, how she was feeling and what she was thinking. And, Kate said when she rocked up wearing that white suit and the big broad brimmed white hat, it was, no one's putting Melania in a corner. She stole the show.
Then there's the second inauguration in January this year. I thought she looked amazing, but Kate would say that she was sending a very stern message that day.
Yeah, I think she sees it that, this is the evolution of a First Lady who had said that she was modelling herself on Jackie Kennedy, and you can see that in the first outfit that she wore for the first inauguration, and was much more flowy and floral and in her outfits in the first term, to this one, which is almost like a military a military protective get up, in Kate's words,
with the hat, the big brimmed hat.
And of course, there's that comedy skit as well, which is watch out for your borders, protect your borders.
If you don't control your borders.
The president couldn't kiss her. Again, is it a sign? Was it just was it just a fantastic outfit, or was it to prevent any, access in from her husband? Kate Bennett says there's no coincidences. Perhaps it is the latter.
I mean, let's just, entertain the thought that they do sit down to dinner at night and have discussions. Can you imagine the dinner table discussions between the two of them?
Well, I don't know if they do sit down at the dinner table.
But this is the question. This is the mystery.
No one could answer that question, whether they do or not. The only person who did actually see them at the dinner table was Michael Wolff when he was invited.
But there's a dinner table and there's a dinner table. I mean, dinner in, as he said it, like a wedding reception type affair is not normal dinner.
What do you think that they talk about at the dinner table?
I don't know, but I find it fascinating that throughout this story and doing this story is that people just, they have no idea. They do such a good job at keeping everyone guessing.
Yeah. I think they have a very small inner sanctum of people. And so I think, but that is part of her intrigue as well, is that she does keep everyone guessing, by being in the shadows.
There's a power in that as well, I think. I think that there is something about, I don't need to answer to you. I don't need to tell you who I am. I will turn up when I want to turn up. There is something to be said for that. Or is there just another side of her that nobody knows about?
I think I kind of lean to the side that she is a First Lady, that the country has never seen anyone like this before, and that there is an independence about her, a sense of her knowing who she is. And I think that's a wonderful thing. I mean, you saw moments of her independence in the meeting between her and Donald Trump, where he rocked up on another date, spotted Melania, and asked for her number, and she said, no, I'll take yours. I'm sure he was a man that was very used to getting what he wanted, and so I think that was perhaps an early sign of her as a very independent person.
I also thought it was interesting too that there were two very different opinions for the people who we spoke to for this story about whether she's his weak spot or whether he doesn't listen to her either. She's just another person he wouldn't listen to.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It really depended on who you spoke to, but I think the one thing that did come out is that they are aligned politically, that she is conservative, that a lot of his policies that you think, back to the dinner table, would she be saying, like the tariffs, what are you thinking, starting a trade war, that they'd actually be quite aligned on some of those more kind of controversial policies that the president has announced.
Has there ever been any indication of that she's been aligned, publicly, or is that's just
that is just from from the people that we spoke to. Although she did in her memoir come out and say that she does support a woman's right to choose, which around abortion. And again, I think a First Lady publicly kind of challenging a president on a position like that publicly is quite unheard of. But then there's another side to that, which is, he needed to kind of soften his image with female voters. And so the first, Melania came in to smooth that role as well. So like everything with this story, there is always two sides.
I mean, and optics are everything. What do you think her absence, the impact her absence is having on the American people and his popularity even?
Well, when they left office the first time, she was, according to some polls, the most unpopular First Lady that the country had ever had. I think second time around, people would say that she is more popular. The American public are kind of, they do know her. She's not such an unknown as she was perhaps the first time around. What they think of her, I think it's only really starting to become apparent that she's really not around. And what the American public think, I think, again, she has huge support amongst the Republican population of voters.
Do you think it adds to that, that unstable feeling that you get on the ground in Washington of Trump with his controversial policies and the impact, that's having globally? Do you feel like then when you don't have the First Lady right behind him that it adds to that instability and that worry of everyone thinking what is going to happen in the next 4 years?
I think there was certainly a sense when we were on the ground that, it was a new reality. And I think everyone's just, it's kind of like a watch and wait, ultimately. Did you get that sense?
Strap yourself in. I definitely got the sense from everybody who we spoke to that, from the hair and makeup artists that we used for the story, that they too were like, oh God, like what's going to happen? Where is she? Does she love him? Like everyone seems to have the same questions.
Yeah.
But very few people will answer it. And the other thing to note for this story is that it really wasn't easy to get people to speak on the topic.
No.
Why do you think that is?
I think, going back, I think that they have a very small inner sanctum of people, she's got a documentary coming up. So potentially people are being, locked up and speaking exclusively for that. Mm-hmm. I think it's also potentially difficult right now for people to maybe criticise the White House and this administration.
Which is worrying, right?
Yeah. In a democracy, yeah.
You speak of the documentary, that's a 60 million Australian dollars documentary deal. There's the new book and there's also the cryptocurrency. It became quite a topic in the story about making money while in office. That's unheard of.
It's the amount of money that the Trumps are making profiting off the public, their public profile, their public office is unheard of. It's not illegal for a First Lady to be doing this, but it is certainly, it's precedent setting. It's never been done.
Again, optics are everything though, isn't it? You've got people that can't afford to put food on the table and then you're hearing about these multi-million dollar, that can't be good for their image.
And I think that was one thing that the people we spoke to did agree on. They didn't agree on many other points, but they did agree on that. Both Anita McBride, who was the former Chief of Staff to former Lady Laura Bush, and Michael Wolff, both felt that it was inappropriate.
Well, it's going to be an interesting 3.5 years to go into this. Thank you, Anne, for joining us today. And if you missed the story, you can catch up on our 60 Minutes YouTube channel or 9 Now. Thanks for joining us and we'll see you next time. We sought our own statement from the Office of the First Lady. They refused to answer any of the questions we asked. Instead, they hit back with this blistering response.
It is unprofessional and irresponsible for 60 Minutes Australia to tarnish and defame the reputation of the First Lady of the United States. The details of Mrs. Trump's personal life and family should be respected as private. One must consider the potential harm caused by creating unfounded narratives solely to garner clicks.